welcome to your next Python training lesson. In this lesson, we will be covering 2D arrays. Last lesson, we covered lists and different methods that were associated with lists, such as slicing, adding two lists together, the range function, and we also covered the in function as well. 2D arrays is just a fancy name for a list inside of a list. For example, my2D, which is a list, will have 1, 2, 3 as the first element, 5, 1, 2 as the second element, and 3, 5 as the third element. Notice here we have two square brackets inside of each other. Let's see what this code runs. If I run this code, I will simply get 5, 1, 2, because all we're doing is we're looking at the commas and we're just printing the first index. So this would be the 0th index, and that's the first index. So the list 5, 1, 2 can actually be considered as an element of that list. But what if I wanted to print a specific element of that list? That's what we're going to be taking a look at later. But for now, let's take a look at this index element table. If we have my2D, the array, as 1, 2, 3, 5, 1, 2, and 3, 5, we can say that index 0 will be 1, 2, 3 as the list. Index 1 will be 5, 1, 2 as the list. And index 2 will be 3, 5 as a list. We can refer to specific elements in a 2D list by just having two square brackets. Let's try running this code. When we run this code, we get 2 and 5. That is because my 2D of 1, that refers to simply this list, would be 5, 1, 2. But now we're calling the second index of this list. And what is the second index of my 2D of 1? That would simply be 2, because this is the 0th index, the first index, and then the second index. What about this case? My 2D of 2 would simply be the last element, or the second index, of 3 and 5. When we call the first index of that list, we're going to simply get 5 like that. We can think of this concept as row and column. The rows will represent each of the lists. Notice here in row 1, we have 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3 as the first row. And then in the second row, we have 5, 1, 2. And then in the third row, we have 3, 5, 2. 3, 5, 2 as the third list in my 2D array. We can also think of the columns as well. The first column, the row 1, column 1 will be 1. Row 2, column 1. So row 2 refers to this list. Column 1, the first element, will be this list. Think about what this means. We can actually iterate through a 2D array as well, so printing every element in a 2D array. Let's take a look at this code. My 2D is a 2D array, and for each row in this array, we're going to be printing the row. Or we can say for each element in this array. So for each one of these, we're going to be simply printing them out. Like that. So we get 1, 2, 3, 5, 1, 2, and 3, 5, 2. We can also use a nested for loop, which is just a fancy way of saying a for loop inside a for loop to accomplish the same thing. If we run this code, we're simply going to be getting all of the elements inside each of this list. When we run for row in my 2D, we're basically referring to each of these lists. And for column, or for each of the element in this list, we're going to be simply printing them out. So we get 1, 2, 3, 5, 1, 2, and then we get 3, 5, 2 at the end. And it matches the elements we have in here. So for when I say for row in my 2D, I'm referring to 1, 2, 3, 5, 1, 2, and 3, 5, 2. And when I say for column in row, I'm referring to each specific element in the subarray, you can think of as. We can also use for I in range type of concept in here as well. So let's try running this code. We have a different 2D array now. So 3, 4, hide this, 3.0, and Dan. Make sure to remember that a list can contain any data types. Our row length, or how many lists there are, is 3 because we have 1, 2, 3. And our column length is 2 because in each of these lists there are 2 elements. 1, 2, 1, 2. For row in range of row length, what this code is doing is basically repeating how many times? This code is repeating 3 times because we're doing for row in range of 3. In the inside of the for loop, we're repeating this code 2 times because we're saying for column in range of 2. So basically this code will allow us to print every single element. But we have to do something similar to this. For row in range, remember this code repeats 3 times and this code repeats twice. We're going to print my list of row and then column. Let's see if this works or not. If I run this, we get 3, 4, hide this, and 3.0, and Dan. Remember, when we had our range of 3, this basically created a secret list of 0, 1, 2. When we had range of 2, this created 0, 1. But in this case, this is equal to range of row length, and this is also equal to the range of column length. So each of these ranges actually created this indexes. So the list 0, 1, 2, what this actually represents is the index. So if I asked you to find the 0th index of my list, that would be 3, 4. If I asked you to find the first index, that would be this. And if I asked you to find the second index, that would be that. What 0, 1 represents is the subarray's index. So for each of these subarrays, or this mini list, you can think of it as the index for each of those lists. This concept will take a lot of time to master, but don't worry, we have a practice quiz for you and lots of practice questions made for you. Please contact me if you need any help, and see you in the next one.